Hi, welcome. In this session, let us talk about test cases, one of the highly used term within a project team or within an organization, software development team or software development organization.
I'm Kumar and welcome to my channel on tech and tutorials.
Test case is a term which is used almost daily in any project team. From QA engineer to developer to even director level, you might have heard asking questions like, do we have test cases for this? If some bug is found, you will see a mail asking, do we have a test case for this? Is this scenario covered? Is your test case covering such and such scenarios, etc., etc. So it's one of the most highly used day-to-day term within a team. Test cases are supposed to be written by the QA engineers. Everybody uses this term, but actually very few in the team cares to review or update it regularly. QA engineers also most of the times don't come back and update the test cases, which is actually not correct. We should be regularly updating the test cases, invalidating or marking them as not required. We should be doing that continuously as a QA engineer. So apart from the QA engineer who writes it, the developer is supposed to be reviewing those test cases and give feedback, and even customers are sometimes included in those reviews and all. They can give feedback to those test cases if it is valid or not. So the test cases need to be reviewed early on during your project so that the bugs are caught early and customers have a quality or a good product. As a QA engineer, we have to write it properly so we don't miss any scenarios that will actually catch a bug. And remember that even if our team doesn't review or comment our test cases, we have to send the test cases to customers in the end of our testing in most cases. Or when the product is released, it needs to be sent to the customer. Or even if when a bug is found later, we as a QA engineer would be asked questions like, do we have test case? Can you share your test cases and things like that? So we don't want to embrace ourselves later saying that test cases, we don't have test cases and all. So it's better to cover all the scenarios in our test cases. In this video session, let us look into how to write a test cases effectively in order to catch bugs before the product is released to the customer. We will see how we can write a test case so that when it is reviewed by someone, he or she will actually admire us on seeing the details that we have captured in our test cases. So to start with, what is actually a test case? If you see the definition in Wikipedia, test case is a specification of the inputs, execution conditions, testing procedures, and expected results. So in simple terms, what actually is a test case? A test case is actually just a simple procedure of testing a particular requirement. So we can just stay in there. Next point is, why do we need a test case?
Okay, we need to write test cases as my manager asked to do so. It's a process we need to follow. We need to write cause we don't have anything to do when the developer writes the code. Seriously? Okay, so some of those points were true, by the way. So the main thing we need, right, cause we need documented proof that we have actually tested the product. This document will be part of our test deliverable, and also we need to ensure that we did a good test coverage of our tested product. And most importantly, we need tracking of our test in a proper format. And later they will be reusable until the product is live or until the product is in use. Every time we need test something, we can't actually go ahead and read the requirements and test it. We can just go through the test case document and actually anyone can execute it.
The next point is, who will actually write a test case? So
in almost all companies or in almost all teams where there is a QA team, a dedicated QA personnel would be the sole responsible for writing a test case and of course for maintaining it. Maintaining it because we will need to update those test cases as and when it is required.
In certain scenarios, other team members like the analyst, business analyst, or even the developers can help in writing the test cases, but it's the sole responsibility of the QA team or the QA engineer to write test cases. The next question is, when should we write a test case? I would say as soon as possible, as soon as we have the requirements document, as soon as we have something for the feature that is being developed or for the project that is supposed to be developed, we can start to look into writing test cases. So in most cases, like in agile kind of environment, you might be getting the stories and the epics. As soon as you see something in those epics and the stories, we can start to write test cases. we can come back and of course update it later. Anyway, this test case document or the test cases are going to be a running document until the whole product is released to the customer or until the product has become end of life. The test case documents or the test cases are going to be updated. So we should start to write as soon as possible, and we should be capturing everything, whatever information that we have. We can get information through mails, through Jira, through documents most of the time, over the discussions and the team meetings and all. You can start to capture all those inputs. All those inputs are required for writing a test case. Next question is about where and how do we write these test cases. So we write it in XLS template or in Word or Jira or other tools like Quality Center, RTM, and there are a hell lot of other tools where people use to write test cases and all. But the main thing is it should be centralized, and everybody should be able to see and review those test cases. What I've seen is most of the time test cases are written in XLS when Jira is not available or the Jira doesn't have an option of writing test cases. Test cases are written in XLSs, which are actually stored in some centralized location within your company, and it's helpful when you want to share it with somebody or outside your organizations as well. Next point is what constitutes a good test case. So I would say the main thing which we want to capture in a test case is the user's perspective. If we are not able to understand the requirement of the customer, then the customer is going to fail that product or is not going to take that product, and we might get an unpleasant feedback. So most important thing which we should be keeping in mind is the user's perspective, the end user's perspective. Second thing which we want to take note while writing a test case is it should be unambiguous. It should be simple and understandable to everybody. The language should not be too complicated, and it should be understandable to the people who want to review it. Or it's very likely that somebody has written the test cases and somebody else executing the test cases. So it should be unambiguous. Next thing is it should be unique. There should not be any two test cases which is actually testing the same functionality. So it's very important, unique. We don't want to duplicate our test cases and all. And the final point is it should be able to find problems. So find problems in the sense it should be able to find some defects. So we should try to cover all scenarios, reading through the documents and getting all the information while writing the test case itself. We should be trying to think about what areas the developers could miss and what areas it's very probable to find bugs and all. We should be capturing all those in our test cases. So in short form, you can actually put it as FU, and you can just remember these things because these are some of the highly important points which while writing a test case we should keep in mind. User's perspective, first thing. Second thing is unambiguous. It should be simple and not complex. Everybody should be able to understand, and it should be unique. It should be different from each other. There should not be any duplicates. And the final thing is we should be able to find bugs. Okay, enough of the theory. Let's move on to see test case now, how the actual test case document looks like in a Excel format. So this is one simple format which we have put in here. So the first thing in a test case document is actually the document name and the objective here, the test suite. So collection of test case is actually called a test suite, and we can put the test suite name, test suite 01, and what actually it's going to do, login and job creation. For example, this is just a simple put in here, login and job creation. And what is the objective of this document? Test document for functional testing of login and job creation functionality. You can even put what category is this. It's a functional testing or it's a performance testing document or something like that. We can add it based on our needs, but the most important points we have captured it in this document. And the project module and the reference document, what documents were referred while creating this test suite or the test case document, and created by date, author, and then the review by with date can be put in this document. Okay, next let's move on to the actual test case. What are the fields and what are the actual way of writing a test case? So the first column is actually the requirement ID. The requirement ID is required for traceability. Traceability matrix is very important while writing your test case. You want to know that all the requirements in your requirements document does have a test case. So for that matter, we need to provide the requirement IDs, and then this reference doc will have your requirements documents and links here so that it can be easily tracked or easily mapped. And we put the requirement ID here the test case ID. Test case ID, most of the time people just keep test case 01, 02, 03 and all. What we do prefer is we actually prefer to put some kind of information. The more information each of this column has is actually very helpful to all the teams. For example, if you want to put it in a mail, you just said test case 01 is failing. In that case, people will not know what is a test case 01, what it relates to. So if you say the test case 01 login, then people will know, okay, so it's part of the login feature. And so as much information wherever you can put, and it crisp and a simple way, should not be like too much lengthy. So it is useful. So just we want to take note of that. If it's possible, we can just provide some kind of information. What test case is this? Next is the summary and the objective. So people prefer to start with verify this and verify that. The summary should be not too much descriptive, just to define what actually we're trying to do in here. Verify login with a valid user and password. Next is the precondition. Precondition is a set of statements that actually outlines a condition that should be true before we can even execute our test steps. We can go far back to where system needs to be installed and running, but certain things we can actually take implicit and not go that far behind. Such preconditions and more like test environments, program settings, etc. can be listed for the whole test suites, and of course can be mentioned in the test plan. We can just note that specific state our application needs to be just before those main test steps needs to be run or executed for that particular test case. In this case, we just need the system is up and accessible from certain URL to be able to log in. Also, we can link the precondition to another test case. Say we want to write logout user test case, and so in that case, our test case 1 should be executed before we can even execute the logout test case. Well, next is the test steps. This is the core of our test case. This should be clear enough for all to understand and of course execute the test case if somebody else is executing it. Cannot emphasize more, but proper detailed steps is what we should be actually putting in here. Actually, if you are writing it in an Excel, you can just write it like step 1, step 2, step 3, or even you can use these other rows here. You can put a step 1 here, and then you can put a test data in the same row, enter username in this row, and the second row enter password in password field, and you can provide the test data as password here. And like this you can write, or this is also okay. You can put it within the same cell here. You can provide enter username and password. So again, as much information you provide, that is going to be good for the person who is going to test or who is going to review your test cases. And I have written here enter password. I could have just left enter password here, but I prefer to write enter password in password field where to enter this password. So this is quite obvious in case if we are testing the login field, but it might be more relevant when we are testing certain pages where it has multiple, like change password and all. It will have 2 fields for enter password and then confirm password and things like that. So that's why we should just try to keep our practice of putting as much information as possible. Okay, the test data here is actually an important thing, which is what data you want to provide when you are entering your test steps. Some people also put within the test steps only enter username in username field admin and enter password in password field admin, and then this column is not there in some templates, but it's always better to have a different column here so that we can actually provide information separately. So next comes the expected result. The expected result can be multiple. So in this case, it is just a login is successful. If you see in some of the tools like Jira and all, earlier while I was saying you can actually have separate rows for each of these lines. You can have enter username here, you can have 1, and then you can have a 2 here, second enter password here, and in that case you can have an expected result after doing this. So if you enter a password here, what is the expected result you will get while executing this step? And in that case, you can actually fail by step. Actually, this step failed and this step passed. So that is also another useful way of writing test cases. In this case, it is not applicable. That's why I put everything in one column. But in certain scenarios where, for example, like 5 or more than 10 steps, you can actually start using these different rows for writing each of these steps. Okay, so the expected result we have talked about. And the next thing is actually the post condition. So most people don't fill this place post condition, but this is what actually I think would makes most difference while writing a test case and while writing a test case effectively. Actually, in this case, what is happening is most people actually stop here. Expected result login is successful. we should be actually doing the next step and putting that information here, what is in the post condition. Logged in user is taken to the landing home page. Actually, most bug reports and all don't provide much information. They will just provide, okay, I provided username, password, and the login was not successful. But what did you get when you provided that? When you provided a wrong password, your login was not successful. Everybody expects that, but what is that you are getting? So as much information you collect and as much information you put everywhere, even in a bug report or in the defect while you are writing a defect report, that is going to be helpful to the team, and the developers is going to appreciate it, even the project managers. Okay, so let's come back to the post conditions after talking about the other fields. The actual result is actually, yeah, this is where you capture what is it successful or pass and what did you get. You were not able to log in, your system crashed or something like that, you can put in the actual result. Status is, it can be pass, fail, or this test case is not applicable at all, or you are blocked. This test case is blocked because there's a bug in another test case which is actually blocking this. You can put in this status field. And then next is the remarks, comments. If you have any comments on this test case, you are not able to execute because of this and that reason, you can provide in here. Next is the defect ID. If you have logged some defect, you can provide that information here. This is actually really helpful field for tracking your defect. You can sort by and you can find out this defect is causing how many test cases failure and all. This is an important field. And finally, the test case type. Actually, if it's a positive test case or if it's a negative test case, you can use this field test case type to define what type of test case is this. So let's come back to our test case and see that post condition. Let's see an example. So what I've done is I have started an Jenkins server in my machine. Let me actually try to log in 27.0.0.1. So this is a Jenkins server which is running in my local host, and actually this is the login. Let us actually try to log in here and let's look into scenario how we can write a test case here, the full test case. So we want to create a job here. So in that case, we'll go to this new item. We can put down in the step login to Jenkins and then go to new item link in that home page. And once here, you have to define a job name. So we just put some job here and then we have to select a freestyle project and we have to click OK. So let us come back here and say, for example, I try to put something like 002. And test case, just copy this test case job create, and then we will write verify job creation with proper name. And then what should be in the precondition? So in the precondition, what we can do, two things. First thing is we can actually link it to this login, because once this is successful, only we can create a job. That is one thing. The second thing is actually we can actually just write down that user is logged in with proper credentials, say admin. We can provide the admin as username and password so that people know that we are trying to log in as an admin user. So there are different other users which can be created in Jenkins. That's why. And then we go to the test tab here. So in the test tab, what we can provide is what we did actually. We just, as I was saying earlier, we go to the new item and then we provide a name, enter a new name here. We provide a new name, some job, and we can define that here. Enter item name, we can provide some job. Test data should be some job. The name, job name, some job, and we can put the steps here. Provide job name in enter an item text field, and then we are supposed to select a type of job here, freestyle project job, and select freestyle project job so that people know which type of job we are trying to create. Then we have to click OK here, which is going to create the job. I'm not going to write this thing, and then expected result is okay. So the expected result is job is created. Okay, job is created. Fine. So this is our expected result. Job is created. Fine. But how do we know that the job is created? Fine. We don't know. We just see this page here. It can be like something like it just showing this page, but actually the job is not created. Once we go back to the home page, we might not see that job. So how do we verify that the job is created? That condition we can put it in the post condition. So here we can provide that user is taken to the job configuration page. So you can put user is taken to job configuration page. So this is first thing which we have noted. So the first post condition is user is taken to the job configuration page. So what we can do next, we should be always eager to put as much more information or as much more technical depth that we want to explore as part of our product while we are testing it. So this is one of the post condition which is good. So how can we be better? So the next thing which we can check is whenever there is a job creation, there should be something which is happening in the background which is actually creating this job, and it can be some kind of DB table column, some column is getting created or some row is getting created in the table or some session is getting created or some files or some folders are getting created within the system which tells that the job got created. So those informations might not be there in the SRS document or your requirements document. That's why if you see here, what I provided is reference document is the requirements document as well as HLD. So HLD is actually in most organizations the high level document, technical document, or the low level document also you can refer while writing your test case. So those informations might be provided in the HLD or in the team discussions and all. You can get those informations. If you can put those informations in the post conditions, then people are really going to be admired about those things, what more details, as long as you are putting all the correct information in your test case and testing it correctly. For Jenkins, what it actually does is it will create a folder in your file system when you create a job. So the Jenkins is running in my system. So when there is a job created, there is a folder being created here, some job. This is the indication that my job is created fine, or at least this is a good information that you can put it in your test case. There should be a folder created in this location and that the job got created successfully. And inside that folder, there should be one file config.xml about the Jenkins, and there will be another folder builds, which will have a file called legacy ID. You may not need to go such deep and all, but at least what we can do is can at least provide the information that there will be a folder created in the same name as the job name, and this should be in this part. So such informations you can put it in this post condition place. So for example, here I say folder with name as job name will be created at c://job, and yeah. So this is what actually we can provide. We can actually change this full path and all, but anyway, so the main idea, what I'm trying to focus is the way which we test and the way which we write test cases. As much information as possible and as much information as you can dig out from the developers or from the documents or the requirements documents or HLD or LLD or any type of documents. Okay, so we need to be actually thinking in terms of what all information we can gather about your product and how we can actually do our job better. If we think like that, then say for example, if we go to the interview fully prepared and we have all the knowledge, how would you probably make a difference in front of the interviewer? You are asked question like put down 5 test cases for login page, for example, like Facebook login or Gmail login. Everybody would say, so the first test case is providing a proper username and password. Second is like providing a correct username, wrong password, like that, out of those permutations and combinations. So but you can provide another test case, like a different kind of test case. In this case, when a user is created, there will be a session being created somewhere in the DB or somewhere in the logs or in the file system. We should be actually testing that as well. So you can provide that information. The interviewer is going to admire you, and probably he may hire you as well because of the way which you are working and the way which you are testing and the way which you want to learn more things about the thing which is being tested. He would be appreciative about that. Such things, small things which actually makes difference in our interviews or in our way of working, so that people notice those differences and you will be actually preferred team member of your team. So that's all about the test cases, who writes it, what and all. Saying all that, the end of the day, the thing is mostly to do with the way which you test and number of bugs which you find in testing. Count of the bug, actually most of the QA engineers are chasing after the count of the bug there to show that I have found this many bugs, but the quality of the bug or the quality of the issue which is found also makes a lot of difference. It's not only the count. If you try to concentrate on the such things like expected results and the post conditions and the test scenarios and your way of writing your test cases, is simplicity and from the user's perspective and how to find such and such problems, then you are going to get a lot of bugs and you are going to get a good quality bugs out of your testing, and we will be satisfied with our job and with our career. Thank you.
That's all in this video. I hope it was helpful to you. Thanks a lot for watching, and please do leave a comment below about this video. Thank you.